if you've taken a holiday in the last 2 years, or you've pulled back on P's and K's as the fertiliser stats are indicating, like it's good to go in and maybe take a sample out of different blocks of land just to see what's happened. I didn't spread any 18612, or reduce my 18612 by say 50% in the last 2 years. What's happened my P and K levels?
Hello, I'm Emma-Louise Coffey, and you're welcome to the Dairy Edge, the Teagasc Dairy Podcast. We're bringing you the latest information, insights and opinion to improve dairy farm performance. With the deadline for slurry spreading fast approaching on the 30th of September, Mark Plunkett from the Signpost programme joins us with his tips and advice to maximise the nutrient uptake and productivity from slurry on farm.
I think it's priority over the coming 2 weeks that farmers empty out their tanks, prepare for winter, maximise the amount of storage they have. Also, I suppose to remember that cattle slurry is actually a very valuable source of NP and K. And again, there is still a good response out there in grass fields. We're still getting good rates of grass growth. But I think for the times that we live in, I think as we should, cattle slurry is a very valuable source of P and K, Emma-Louise. So I think we should be targeting that slurry to fields on the farm that have the biggest demand for P and K, or have a requirement for P and K, to keep our soil fertility in balance or in check.
And for somebody in the situation, Mark, where they haven't done a soil fertility test on farm in the last 12 months, where would you suggest those fields are?
It tends to be anywhere you're cutting grass silage. That's where the biggest demand for P and K, and that's where the P and K has originated on. So it's very, very important that, on two fronts. Number one, that you put that P and K back to replenish the soil fertility levels, especially potash. Like cattle slurry is a very valuable source of potassium, and potassium very, very important in terms of nitrogen efficiency. So again, getting a slurry back to those fields, very, very important. Secondly, we're finding here in Johnstown Castle, Emma-Louise, that we're growing more grass, where we're going with slurry as the main nutrient source in silage fields, as opposed to chemical fertilizers, as opposed to your 0730s and your straight nitrogen. So we're getting about 1.5 tons per hectare of extra dry matter yield, and we believe it's coming from the carbon element that we're putting back in through the slurry. Also, by putting the slurry back onto the silage fields, you're reducing the nitrogen loading on the farm as well. You know what I mean? You're taking organic nitrogen, putting it onto a part of the farm that may not be grazed. So that's very, very important, for in terms of sustainability, in terms of environment, and also in terms of water quality, that we're reducing that nitrogen loading, say on the grazing block, for example.
And just you talk about the carbon element. Tell us a little bit more about that, Mark.
Well, it's the organic matter. Like, cattle slurry is anywhere from 4 to 7% dry matter, and that's organic matter is carbon. So by putting that back into the ground, we're feeding the biology, we're feeding the bugs, we're feeding the organic nitrogen reserves, and that's given us a healthier soil, a more productive soil, and applied nutrients are more responsive on those soils. You've also, better soil structure. They're more, resilient to carrying machinery, etc. But you're also growing more grass on those fields by putting that slurry back on the cutting areas where there's little livestock possibly on farm.
And just before I move on, Mark, previously on the Dairy Edge, you would have told us about the 3 R's, and I think it's a really nice thing to remember when we're looking at slurry. So tell us about that.
Yeah, look, in terms of we're talking about the right source. So again, in terms of slurry, it's ideal, as I was saying, for silage fields, or maybe where you want to build some grass covers over the winter period. In terms of the right rate, we're talking anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 gallons per acre at this time of the year. The right place. So again, as I was saying, your silage fields, your drier fields, your more responsive fields, where you're going to get a response to that nutrient in terms of growing grass and also building fertility. And then the right time. Now is the time. The sooner that slurry is spread, you know what I mean, you're going to get a better response, especially to the nitrogen part. Like, as we move into October, the days are shorter, the temperatures are dropping, we're not getting the same response. So we're going to grow a third more grass by getting the slurry out in September um, compared to waiting to the end of September. So it's a more responsive time. Days are still reasonably long, and we're getting good grass growth rates still at this point in time.
And I suppose if we look at it in black and white, Mark, the deadline is coming. You mentioned, it's 2 weeks, and beyond that, there's really no justification for spreading slurry. I suppose it's prohibited for one thing, and then it's just simply bad practice, and it has a detrimental impact on water quality, among other things. But I guess a comment for you on that, and how are people going to best set themselves up that they're not doing that?
Well, again, as we're saying, emptying out tanks now, maximizing the storage, also diverting, say, dirty water or rainwater away from your slurry tanks over the winter period. Having to spread slurry outside of the closed period, as you said, is detrimental. There's no demand or little demand for nutrient during that window or that period, and again, it's getting lost to our waterways.
And then if we turn our attention to lime, Mark, say if we think about now, there's October, November, so you could essentially say there's 2 weeks or 2 months left in the grazing season on farms. And then there is the close period, and then we'll be back out grazing, all going well weather-wise in early February. Where is the window to get lime out in fields?
Well, I suppose once you have paddocks grazed off, it's a great time to get lime out. Like, I suppose traditionally we're heading into the liming season, or we're in the liming season. It's a great time to get lime out over the next 2 months, provided weather allows. Like, soils are shutting down, heading into the winter period. So now is a great time to get lime out. It'll get washed in, it'll have worked, it'll be in place come springtime. And like, as we know, there is many benefits to getting lime out and maintaining our pHs up in the optimum zone or the optimum range.
Remind us of those benefits, Mark.
It very much starts with look, again, as I said, soil health, nutrient availability, at a time with reduced fertilizer usage, by say in a ryegrass sward, by getting the pH up to 6.3 to 6.5, we can mineralize up to 80 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year. We also can mineralize 5 to 6 kilograms of P per hectare per year, thus reducing our fertilizer requirements. We can grow more grass. We can grow up to 2 tons of extra grass dry matter during the growing season. Also, in terms of climate change, by maintaining a higher pH, and I'm talking probably up to maybe 6.8 to 6.9, we can reduce our nitrous oxide emissions by up to 35%. Also, where we're trying to get clover into swards, we've been quite successful, but we need a higher pH. Emma-Louise, we need a pH of 6.5 to 6.8 to establish and maintain the productivity of clover in the sward. So lime, like, it's a low cost input, and really it's the foundation in terms of sustainability, in terms of reducing nitrogen usage on farm. Like, we can mineralize anywhere from 70 to 250 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year. So we can grow anywhere from 2 to 8 tons of grass dry matter from the soil nitrogen supply alone, by having the pH, pK levels in the optimum zone. So, like, and lime is a small cost, Emma-Louise, as we know. Plus, we have the national liming program that's in a lot of people have applied. There's a big budget there. The budget has been doubled to 16 million, and people are going to get the full subsidy on the first 40 tons, which reduces the cost of lime by 50%.
So going into that, we would have talked before, the cost of spreading lime is €25 per ton, and it's so cheap, if we compare it to, I suppose, the chemical products that we're putting out, like, say, your straight nitrogen or your 18612s. But I suppose, like everything, the cost has gone up. So where is the base cost of spreading lime?
Yeah, lime is somewhere, from what I believe, is somewhere around €33 a ton, somewhere in that ballpark.
And when you talk about the national liming program, for those first 40 tonnes, what is the money back on that?
There's €16 a ton back. So again, you're reducing your cost of lime by approximately 50% on that first 40 ton.
And I suppose if we just look at it in real terms and practical things that you can measure on farm, like when you talk about the getting your pH to the right level of 6.3 to 6.5, that 80 kilos of nitrogen per hectare per year. I mean, if you were to put a euro value on that, it adds up significantly across the whole farm. And look, more nitrogen mineralisation inevitably means more grass production, which I guess we're all aiming for on farm.
Well, it's roughly €100 per hectare. Like if you take €80, that's say 120 a kilo. Like, do you know what I mean? So the payback is very, very quick or very, very fast from, the cost of lime is covered, very, very quickly.
When we would have talked through the slurry and lime, you would have talked about I suppose, the greater usage or the greater efficiency and appropriate usage invariably means that you have the opportunity to reduce chemical fertilizer usage. But if we take a step back and look at the greater fertilizer picture, where is chemical nitrogen usage on farm this year, Mark, as you see it?
Well, the Department of Agriculture have recently issued their Q3 fertilizer stats for NPK usage, and again we have seen a further decline in nitrogen. Nitrogen is back by 17%. P and K is back by 7%. So again, in terms of nitrogen, you can say it's positive in terms of climate change, in terms of reducing emissions, reducing our fertilizer use and meeting our targets. Like we're probably on track to be probably somewhere around 300,000 tons of chemical nitrogen for 2023. And that's back from, say, 400,000 tons in 2021. So quite a significant drop, Emma-Louise. You're talking up to a 25% drop in our chemical nitrogen usage. And again, as I say, it's positive. Also, we've increased the usage of protected urea in the last 3 years. We're somewhere around 20% of our total straight chemical nitrogen coming in as protected urea. But I suppose the big concern, Emma-Louise, for me is that P's and K's have taken quite a drop, or there's been a landslide in terms of the reduced P and K use has reduced significantly. In 2022, we've seen a 26 and a 24% drop in P and K, and we're probably on track for again a 24% drop in both P and K in 2023. So that's quite a concern.
And let's go a little bit further into that, Mark, in that obviously for farmers who are spreading compound type fertilizers, if they're not spreading as much nitrogen, there's a pro rata effect for P and K. But I suppose, are you seeing the effect beyond that? Is it that people are tending to go with the straights as opposed to going with your 18-6-12 or your 10-10-20s?
Yeah, look, we've seen a big drop in take 10-10-20, like, you know what I mean. We've seen a 52% drop, in the last 3 years, 18-6-12, 45% drop, and also the high ends, your 24s, 27s, again, 50-60% drop in those products. So like in effect, we're spreading less P's and K's. We're spreading less nitrogen and we're spreading less P's and K's, and that's not a good strategy. In an era of less chemical nitrogen, like P and K is essential to drive efficiency or drive productivity. So we must maintain our P's and K's, or we must put the P's and K's back into the system. Like in fairness, we have been quite good. Farmers have been very, very good in the last, say, 10-15 years. We've continually built soil fertility at a rate of about 1% per year. And again, the stats indicate that we're back to 2008 use levels of P and K. And back then we did see a drop or a fall off in soil P and K fertility. So I think it's something that we need to put on the radar.
For a farmer listening today, Mark, so they can't spread P until next year. There is an opportunity to get out with K. When should farmers be targeting those products on farm to get the best uptake in order to build and maintain soil fertility?
Okay, if we take it at this point in time, we talked about slurry, so that's what I was saying to you, like, you know what I mean? Is there still slurry in tanks? Again, look at the soil test reports, maybe look to see how much P and K is spread in 23, and that slurry should be targeted to fields that need P and K to balance up or replenish those levels. Also, the date is now gone for the application of phosphorus. Like today is the 14th, so we can't spread phosphorus after today. But potash, we can still spread potash Emma-Louise. So again, you know, that would be a good strategy or a good plan to, especially the silage fields that, you know, may not have got adequate levels of potassium in 2023. Now is a good time to put out a bag or two of muriate of potash. Like the research in Johnstown Castle here would show that now is the best time to apply potash, and it'll actually improve nitrogen efficiency next spring. So that would be priority over the coming weeks and months to get extra potash out. In terms of phosphorus then, so again, what we'll be saying is, you know, we should be using the likes of 18,612 on the grazing ground next spring. So again, the second or third round tends to be the best time to get the extra P out. You know, in terms of, you know, feeding the crops need and also building fertility, especially for phosphorus.
And finally, Mark, say for somebody in the scenario where they get out with their slurry in the next 2 weeks, and then as per what we've discussed, they're going to target fields with lime and potash. At what stage should they target a soil test on farm in order to get a picture of where soil fertility is at, given the various fertiliser applications between now and the end of the year?
Ideally, we need 3 months between an application of chemical P or organic P. Do you know what I mean? So you need a 3 month gap to get a reliable indication as regards the soil fertility status. So again, if you're spreading slurry at the minute, you must wait 3 months. So it's probably going to be January before you can go in and take a soil sample on those parts of the farm. For lime, we say 2 years, Emma-Louise, but like generally you'll be working on, you know, a soil sample has been taken in the last 2-3 years in terms of lime.
And finally, on that, Mark, say if we're on farm and we want to really invest heavily in getting soil fertility right in order to have a more, I suppose, holistic nutrient management plan, how regularly should we be doing soil sampling? I mean, in reality, it's relatively cheap in terms of the power it gives you to make decisions on farm. Is it a practice every year, or is 2-3 year intervals sufficient?
2-3 years is fine, but like as I say, if you've taken a holiday in the last 2 years, or you've pulled back on P's and K's as the fertilizer stats are indicating, like it's good to go in and maybe take a sample out of different blocks of land just to see what's happened. You know, I didn't spread any 18612, you know, or reduce my 18612 by say 50% in the last 2 years. What's happened my P and K levels? Again, if you haven't sampled, as I say, in the last 2 years, at a time when we're spreading less P and K, like now could be a good time to go back in and resample the whole farm. As you say, it's like a soil sample it costs only €25 per sample. It's a small cost to bear. You know, especially with fertilizer being so expensive.
Thanks very much, Mark. I suppose the immediate actions that farmers need to think about is the slurry, and you know, where are you in terms of getting the slurry out in the next week, 2 weeks? You know, I suppose emptying the tank is one thing, but where are we putting these very valuable nutrients is the other side of it. I suppose just in terms of health and safety, there is that danger with the tractor work. So, I mean, that everyone would work safely over the next 2 weeks with that. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Emma-Louise.
That's it for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast. And my thanks to Mark Plunkett for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Emma-Louise Coffey, and join us next time for your Dairy Edge.